and also the pictures.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:55.
Top 5 questions for the Longhorns today. Brought to you by Slapsticks Comedy Club. Open now. Get your tickets, slapstickscomedy.com. Shows on Friday and Saturday nights. Not even, to the full tilt of what they're going to be doing, but we did a show. I did a show on Saturday night. I'll be doing a stand-up on August 6th and 7th, so get your tickets for that. You can see me there at Slapsticks Comedy Club. All right, top 5 questions for the Longhorns, the Horns. I'm just going to do a horns down right now, just to get it out of the way.
He's been fined by the Big 12.
That's it. I'm in trouble. All right, but number 5, how fast have they picked up the new system? And I mean that on offense and defense. How fast have they picked up Steve Sarkisian's offense? How fast will they pick up the defense? Because I think that's going to be telling about how well they do early on, because I think an offense, just running backs alone, will have much more to do than they have in the last 4 years.
Yeah, there'll be an adjustment. I don't know. I haven't read much about how complicated it is, apparently, to pick up what they're doing on either side. Doesn't sound like it's going to be too much of an issue with what Bijan Robinson was saying at media days. But, yeah, I mean, there will definitely be some adjustment. You just wonder if it's like simplistic enough in some ways, like an Art Brow's offense, for example, where you can kind of pick it up quickly and move along. But, yeah, don't know.
All right. Number 4, is the defense any good? And
hold on, back to 5. First, I know what. Wasn't there, it was a couple of years ago when they hired their 9th consecutive offensive coordinator where they acted like they were going to go faster than everybody on earth?
Was that the fake Art Brow's OC that they hired during the midst of the scandals? Well, y'all remember that doozy of going and hiring like the guy removed from the guy removed from the guy removed from Art Brow's? To be their OC and run the Brow's offense after their media had played a large role in forcing Brow's out. They go and just hire a guy on his tree and then start running his offense. Like, I'll never forget that, man. Like, that's all-timer stuff.
Yeah. All right, number 4, is the defense any good? This is something Steve Sarkisian at Washington never really wrapped his arms around. He eventually parlayed it into the USC job, and that was great. But it is something I do think that is going to be probably the biggest problem for Steve Sarkisian at Texas is he's not a defensive guru. So what does that mean going forward? Who does he have running the defense? Is his offense, do the offense and the defense jive? Is it going to work?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about their DC. They've got Keandre Coburn's obviously an immense talent.
Their defensive front, it looked very impressive, but we've said that before.
Yeah,
they got animals up front.
Coburn for sure is. I don't know about the rest of them, but they lose Joseph Osai, who was a good player. But, I mean, they've got talent. It's one thing you always say about Texas, right? They have talent, but, I don't think DeMarvion Overshown or any of the guys who I had to hear about on a daily basis during their recruitments, I don't think any of them have lived up to their billing. So it's about their senior years at this point. Maybe it all clicks for them.
Yeah. Number 3, who are the other stars on the offense?
Besides who?
Besides Bijan Robinson.
Jordan Whittington, if you believe hype.
If he can stay healthy. He's very, very good. Kid from Cuero came with a lot of attention, but, he's been hurt a lot. He's been hurt a lot.
Yeah, we don't know who their quarterback is. I mean, probably Casey Thompson, whoever the quarterback is.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, but, I mean, whoever that is. And, I mean, they've got some good receivers and whatnot. There's not anybody that just jumps to mind. I guess, is Josh Moore still there, I think? Then he would be the guy
made big plays for them
to make big downfield catches. But they got a little bit, but not a bunch of just names that immediately pop to mind.
Yeah. Number 2, is the talent really there? I mean, and you said, Craig, there's talent, and there's talent, but is the talent that they need to be the Texans that they envision themselves being, is it really there? And I ask this question because – when you look at the teams who are competing for conference and national titles, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, which is the envision where they envision themselves, and I think a lot of their fans think they have that level of talent, it's clear that it's not there because those teams are putting guys in the NFL. And I'm not talking about good players in the NFL. It doesn't matter. They're putting players in the league. Texas is not really doing that and hasn't done it for a good long while.
Well, Texas doesn't do it because they don't develop anybody. Mm-hmm. The other schools develop people. When Matt Rule recruited a guy, they were better 3 years later than they were when they started. I can't recall the last Texas player who started off as not already super hyped that just came out of nowhere and became a huge, great player for them. And yet I can name like a handful of guys who haven't come anywhere close to living up to their building they got as recruits. So I think they get bit by the hype bug and they do it to themselves. It's self-inflicted as much as anything. And you think that people would learn about these recruiting services after 20 years, but Texas guys usually get bumped a little bit. I've seen it. I've seen a kid get no attention. He commits to Texas and he adds at least a star to his rating by the next day.
Also, there are like 40 colleges or so who have had more first-round draft picks since 2011 than Texas.
Yeah, they go there and they don't develop. They're the same player, if not worse, than when they arrived, with the exception being like a Sam Ehlinger, who was, I guess, a little bit better than he was when he first started, but that was kind of maxed out. He was maxed out. He wasn't going to be anything more than what he was. But even he was pretty much the same player all 4 years, maybe a better thrower by the end.
They're pretty good about having the guys who come off the bus looking pretty good type athletes, but that doesn't mean they can play football or they're tough or they do get better as they're on campus.
Well, and then you think about a lot of their guys that do get drafted, it's not even really based off what they did in college so much as it's still that hope for what that player could be. So like a Holton Hill should never have been, and he's a bad example, or like I'm trying to think of a kid now who doesn't have some sort of a little asterisk next to him. Chris Boyd does too. But like a Chris Boyd was a star for them, right? He's like a late round draft pick. So he never really got any better, but he ended up in the NFL. He's been there like 3 years now and will probably play for like 10 years because he's a good player, obviously. But you would have kind of known that if you watched them.
What you want, but the other thing is, that to your point about not developing, if a guy's going to be a 10-year NFL player and you've got 4 or 5 of those on your roster, wouldn't you expect more wins out of your roster when you've got guys who are good enough to be pros for a long time? Number one, who's the quarterback? Is it Casey Thompson? Is it Hudson Card? It's probably Casey Thompson. I mean, he was the leader out of spring, but
yeah, I think it's probably him. No reason to. I mean, unless
he was explosive in that game.
Yeah, I mean, unless Card just erupts in spring, in fall ball or something, even if he does, I think Thompson, barring something, mistake-wise, it's too large to ignore or an injury, I think he's probably the guy, especially after the way that bowl game ended.
And Card's good, and it's good that if Thompson doesn't do it, if he's hurt, whatever, hope that didn't happen to him, that they have somebody else they feel good about to rely on. You just hope what Thompson did, although he did it for a lengthy amount of time in that bowl game, is not what a lot of people grabbed onto with a couple of throws in a Big 12 championship game, and that Jacob Zeno can get back to that level consistently than what he did against Oklahoma in that game up in Arlington. All right, thanks to our